All right, good morning, everybody. I think we're about to get started, so thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Megan Tate. I'm Vice President of Community Impact at the Winnipeg Foundation. Before I start this morning's official program, I would like to acknowledge that the Winnipeg Foundation is located on Treaty 1 territory, which are the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. These Indigenous communities and others have contributed and continue to significantly contribute to our society here in Winnipeg and across Canada. So welcome. Okay, so I'm so excited to see all of you in person. This is the first sort of general information session that the Winnipeg Foundation has hosted live and in person since January of 2020. So this theater space is very new. I'm used to doing Zoom info sessions from my dining room. So if we have some technical difficulties, just bear with me as this is my first in-person session in quite a while. Okay, so like I said, the first half of the presentation is going to be meet our community impact team, a little bit of a conversation about the Winnipeg Foundation strategic priorities, a look at our 2024 grants calendar of intakes, and finally detailed information about our community grants program. So first, our community impact team. What was previously known as the grants team is now called the community impact team at the Winnipeg Foundation, and that'll become a little bit clearer to you as I move through the presentation. So on this first slide, we have the community impact leadership team, me, Megan Tate, who I've already introduced myself. We also have Neneth Banas, who's our manager of grants. Neneth is the lead on all of our responsive grant programs. Andrea Zimmer is our manager of community impact operations. She's the one that keeps everything running smoothly, everything from our application form to making sure that you get your grant payments. And finally, Jennifer Partridge is our manager of special projects. Jennifer takes the lead on some of our strategic priorities that we've identified for the foundation. Next up are our 5 program officers. I'm not sure if you can see them in the doorway, but I'll start with Noah Ehrenberg. Noah is a senior program officer with the portfolio of health, wellness, and recreation. To the right is Aaliyah Mrochak. She's the senior program officer for children and youth. At the bottom is Anna Maria Pazzi, who is our program officer. Anna Maria has a number of portfolios within the community impact team. Then we have Carrie Ryan, who has 2 portfolios, environment and climate change, as well as literacy, education, and employment. And last but not least, Joanna Turner, the Senior Program Officer for Arts, Culture, and Heritage. So that gives you a little bit of a sense, hopefully, of who's the best person to reach out to if you have questions, sort of thinking about the nature of your organization's work and what portfolio that might fall into. We also have a team of grants coordinators who do really important work behind the scenes. Dana Kremski, Effie Suguenza, and Nicole Meyer. And finally, Kayla Dauphiné, who's on leave at the moment. And then rounding out our community impact team is Jennifer Lucas, the program officer for education. Jennifer leads all of our student awards initiatives. Mercy Aluafemi is our youth program officer. Mercy is the lead for all of our youth engagement initiatives like Youth in Philanthropy and the Summer Internship Program. And Roxanne Tacky is our learning, evaluation, and impact analyst. So that is the community impact team. So despite some changes on our team and at the Winnipeg Foundation, much of who we are at the Winnipeg Foundation has remained the same. We're still a community foundation built by people from all walks of life to support all types of charitable activities in our community. We're always so proud to say that we're Canada's very first community foundation, established in 1921. Today, there's close to 200 community foundations from coast to coast to coast, including 56 right here in Manitoba. And we remain true to our vision, which is a Winnipeg where community life flourishes for all. So one of the things that makes us a community foundation is our donors. People from all walks of life who've made gifts to the community foundation to be used to support our community. We're a collection of more than 4,000 permanent endowment funds established over the past 102 years. Each fund has its own trust conditions to ensure donors' wishes are respected, and we do take our stewardship of those funds very seriously. Those endowed funds are pooled and invested, and each year a portion of the income from those funds is what we have to make grants back into community. In 2024, our spending rate is 4.6%. And our spending policy has really been designed to minimize the impact of market fluctuations on our granting. If our Vice President of Finance was here today, she would show you a chart of our investment returns that's very erratic. And by having our spending policy, we can ensure consistent support to community. One thing worth noting about donors is last year, you may remember, we announced an incredibly generous gift from Miriam Bergen. This gift was valued at $500 million and represents the gift of her company to the Winnipeg Foundation. Eventually, this gift will increase the foundation's granting capacity, but as you can imagine, bequests are always very complex, and a bequest of this nature is incredibly complex, and so we're just working through the details of how that will be able to impact our granting. But I think the thing that's so important to note is that this gift was unrestricted. And so Ms. Bergen has not put any restrictions on how her gift can be used in community. So I always like to say it's not really a gift to the Winnipeg Foundation, it truly is a gift to Winnipeg. So a little bit about our granting. This is fresh off the presses, that in 2023, the Winnipeg Foundation supported over 1,000 charities. This includes $16.5 million dispersed in response to grant applications to the community. The bigger picture is that altogether the Winnipeg Foundation was able to grant $85.6 million to various community organizations. You may have noticed this announcement recently in the paper and on our website and social media. It's important to note that this reflects a whole bunch of granting activity at the Winnipeg Foundation. So I think many people, when they think of the foundation, they think of our responsive grant programs. So people like you come to sessions like this, you fill out applications, submit them, they get reviewed by our grants committee. But it's actually a relatively small portion of the granting that we do in community. So I thought it would be helpful just to walk through this chart a little bit at a high level. So the biggest share of our granting actually is disbursements from agency and designated funds. So agency funds are permanent endowment funds established by community organizations like yours, and each year the annual income goes back to those organizations to be used at their discretion, essentially unrestricted funding that goes back for their use. Designated funds are where a donor has identified which charity or charities they would like to benefit from their gift in perpetuity. So they may name 1 or 2 or 3 charities who will annually receive income from their endowment fund. Next is our responsive granting, and as I mentioned earlier, last year that represented $16.5 million of our grant making. The chart, or the line under that, is donor advised granting. And so we have many donors who each year are actively engaged in how they make decisions in which charities will be supported by their gift. So one of the questions that we often get from community organizations is, how do I access a donor advised fund? And there's really 2 ways to access a donor advised fund. First of all is through existing relationships that you have with donors. So many of you have long-standing relationships with donors. Those donors may have a donor advised fund at the Winnipeg Foundation, and that's really just their vehicle for giving. And so we encourage you to continue to steward those donors in the way that you always have. The second way to access donor advised funds is through our community grants program. And so we work very closely with our community generosity team to share granting opportunities with donors. And it's sort of our job to match up projects with donor interests. So those are the 2 main ways to be able to access donor advised funds. Maybe I'll skip down to the bottom 2 bars of our chart. Last year, we granted about the type is small, just shy of $6 million for what we call leadership projects. These are grants awarded at the discretion of our board of directors in alignment with strategic priorities that they've identified. And finally, at the bottom, you'll see about $3 million that was dispersed in the form of scholarships and student awards. The other thing to know about our granting is that our support is spread across a range of causes within our community. So this chart here shows how our grants went out into the areas of arts, culture, and heritage, children, youth, and families, environment, health, wellness, and recreation, and literacy, education, and employment. So you'll hear us talk about being a 360-degree funder at the Winnipeg Foundation, and that's really what it means, is that we don't fund a particular issue or sector, that we fund all areas of charitable activity in our community. So around this time last year, the Winnipeg Foundation released our new strategic plan. At that time, we identified 4 pillars for our work: community impact, community generosity, community endowments, and community champion. I'll speak about community impact a little bit later in the presentation, but wanted to share a few elements of the other pillars that I thought might be of interest to you today. First, under community endowments, one of our commitments is to explore access to capital in support of community priorities. We know that community organizations have a range of capital needs, and we're looking at different ways of being able to support that activity beyond grants. Some of you may have received some recent surveys from the Foundation as we seek to get a better understanding of the sector's capital needs, as well as the various ways that you hope to finance those projects. Under the community champion pillar, we've identified a few key areas where we'd like to increase our focus and have a deeper impact. This includes 3 signature strategic priorities. The first is to improve the well-being of people living within a specific area of the city, which we refer to as the Community Area for Revitalization, or CARE. So that's the area in and around Thunderbird House that includes many of our community partners who support those who are unhoused, thinking of Main Street Project, Solo Mission, Thunderbird House, the Public Washroom, and the Aboriginal Centre of Winnipeg. The second area that we've identified is supporting children, youth, and families engaged in Manitoba's child welfare system, where we're focused on supporting families to prevent the number of kids who go into care, as well as to support better outcomes for youth who are aging out. And finally, under the champion pillar, we've identified a need to increase the health of the charitable sector overall. So underpinning all of these strategic pillars are 3 very important foundational areas. First, the Foundation is committed to fostering values of diversity, equity, and inclusion within our organization and decision-making processes. In addition, we're eager to learn from our community partners about how you're creating and evolving your own DEI practices so that we can work together in building a more inclusive and equitable future for all. Truth and reconciliation is also recognized as a complementary but distinct lens in our strategic plan. Truth and reconciliation was also reflected in our previous strategic plan, and we see this as an important continuation of that work. Finally, we've identified climate as one of the most urgent issues of our time. Not just because the river trail is melting in January, but also because of how climate change intersects with so many of the other issues that the Foundation cares about, including human health, social justice, human rights, and truth and reconciliation. So how we move forward on these critical issues will provide key lenses through which we'll view all of our work. So a little bit of our approach to what informed the building of the Foundation's strategic plan. So that's include an intentional focus on convening our stakeholders and listening to feedback, as well as input from the community more broadly. Today I'll share some of the things that we looked at and how we put them into the strategic plan. So first up is our vital signs report. And I actually have a copy here. So this is our vital signs report. You may have received a copy in the mail. I think we've got extra copies at our office. And then of course it's always available on our website. So also last year, we released the findings from what's our second vital signs report. This report looked at community well-being and is a snapshot of Winnipeg, our strengths, our challenges, our opportunities for the future. The 6 key findings from Vital Signs will have an impact on our grant making, and we're interested in where our community partners like yourselves see yourselves amongst these vital priorities of a sense of belonging, confidence in institutions, mental health, addictions, hunger, and experiences of homelessness. We also engaged in another grantee perception report. So we value our relationships with community organizations like yours who receive funding from the Winnipeg Foundation, but we know that it can be a little bit challenging for you to give us truly honest feedback about how we're doing. And so that's why we contracted the Center for Effective Philanthropy to conduct an anonymous survey of organizations that have recently received community grant funding from the Winnipeg Foundation. Some of the key messages that we heard through the responses to this survey is the need for longer and more flexible funding, the desire for increased interaction with the Foundation staff, more transparency in our funding decisions, and more non-monetary support from the Winnipeg Foundation. In addition to surveying grantees, of course, we also wanted to hear from our donors. Some of the key findings from our donor survey that might be of interest to you is that donors would like to hear more about the impact of their giving. We engaged Probe Research to conduct also an anonymous survey of our donors to help us find out more about their experiences and which societal issues they are concerned about in our city. And so again, we're working with our community generosity team to figure out how we can best support our donors and connect them to the impact of their generosity. So what does our strategic plan look like in action? So the first thing that I want you to know about the Winnipeg Foundation is that we're still committed to funding the full range of charitable activity in our community. So again, being that 360-degree funder. However, some of the research that we did through Vital Signs and other avenues has identified urgent and critical areas that the Foundation is uniquely positioned to respond to. So you'll see this both in our champion pillar, which I've already spoken to, as well as some of the key strategies under our community impact pillar. So first, we know that some community organizations are underrepresented in the allocation of philanthropic dollars. This includes, but isn't limited to, organizations that are led by and serve Indigenous, Black, Asian, 2S LGBTQ+, and disability communities. And we know this because of reports like the one prepared by Sharon Redsky and Mark Bloomberg that looked at Canadian charities, so like foundations, giving to Indigenous charities and qualified donees, which found that back in 2018, Indigenous groups received about $1 for every $178 that non-Indigenous-led organizations received. Another report prepared by the Network for the Advancement of Black Communities found that in 2017 and 2018, giving to Black-led organizations was less than 1% of all giving. So we've started conducting an analysis on the Foundation's own grant-making activities, and we know that we have room to grow in this area. So the first strategy that we've identified under community impact is to increase equity in the philanthropic sector, and particularly increasing the Winnipeg Foundation's allocation of grant dollars to those underrepresented communities. Number 2, we've spoken about Vital Signs and some of the issues identified by community that the Winnipeg Foundation could perhaps address. And so over the next 4 years, the Winnipeg Foundation has made a commitment to track and report on our grant making in those areas with a goal of increasing the total grant dollars allocated to the 6 Vital Signs priorities. And third, we know from the grantee perception report, from speaking with you, from listening to you, that the needs of the charitable sector continue to grow, and the sector is continuing to be asked to do more with less. And the last few years have been particularly challenging for the nonprofit sector, and we know that even before that, the sector was stressed and stretched. The Winnipeg Foundation simply can't solve everything with our grant making alone, and we must find other ways to support the sector. We also heard from grantees that responded to the Grantee Perception Report survey that you're looking for us to provide additional non-grant support. So the third key strategy that we've identified for community impact is to increase support beyond grant dollars to the nonprofit sector. This could include providing capacity building support, for example, sharing technical expertise in areas that we have expertise, like planned giving, exploring impact investments, and convening and collaborating. So over the last year, some of the ways that the community impact team has begun the work of putting our strategic plan into action includes additional convening. So we convened many organizations last year to have conversations about the strategic plan and how you saw yourselves reflected in that work. Some of the things that we heard during that session were that the impacts of the pandemic and ongoing challenges organizations are experiencing are seen in the community. We also heard how organizations are interacting with government and experiences with government funding. We heard about the need for increased staff support. And we also learned more about how organizations see themselves aligned with the vital signs priorities. Our team has also been working on streamlining the calendar of intakes to reduce the administrative burden on community organizations. We know that your time is better spent working in community and not filling out forms for the Winnipeg Foundation. And finally, we've been exploring how we can offer longer and more flexible funding. So all of this work has resulted in some changes to our grant intakes for 2024. And so in the next few slides, I'll share some of those changes. So first of all, we have committed to reintroducing multi-year grants at the Winnipeg Foundation for our fall intake. We're currently working with our Community Impact Committee to determine exactly what that program is going to look like, and so we'll have more details on that later this year. I really encourage you to subscribe to our e-newsletter or check our website for updates, and we'll certainly have an information session like this one on that grants program once all of the details have been finalized. One thing that it's important to note is that organizations in 2024 will be able to apply for both a community grant and a multi-year grants program, assuming your organization and your project matches the criteria for multi-year grants. I do want to highlight that the Community Grants Program does remain our largest and most flexible granting program. I heard someone recently call it our Swiss Army knife of funding opportunities because of the range of projects that are eligible for funding, and Neneth will speak to that in a little bit more detail in the second half of the presentation. Ooh. There we go. In an effort to reduce the number of applications organizations must complete, we have amalgamated 3 of the granting programs that we previously offered that supported organizations that work with children and youth. So that includes the grant program formerly known as Nourishing Potential, the program for camp and summer program grants, and the program called Growing Active Kids. And this has all been amalgamated into a new children and youth program grants. I want to reassure everyone that the funding levels are the same. We're still going to be able to draw on our Nourishing Potential Fund and other funds that supported this work, but we wanted to have a streamlined process so that organizations only had to submit one application, the conclusion of the project, that you'd only have to submit one final report. And so organizations can apply for up to $25,000 to support established youth programs. So that's important to know that this isn't for pilot projects or new youth programs. This is for existing youth programs that serve children and youth facing systemic barriers to participation, including BIPOC, 2SLBGQ+ youth, youth from economically disadvantaged communities, and youth with disabilities or chronic illnesses. The application for this intake is currently open, and the deadline to apply is February 16th. Earlier this month, we did host an information session specific to children and youth program grants. I believe that recording is available on our website. Aaliyah is also here today, and so if you have questions about that grant program, I encourage you to find Aaliyah at the break. And we always want to give a shout out to community organizations who share their photos with us. So this is a photo of the Peaceful Villages after school program, courtesy of the Peaceful Village. So next up is our major capital grants. So we will be offering this grant program at the same timelines as we previously had. This grant program is for capital campaigns and large capital projects where the request to the Winnipeg Foundation is $100,000 or greater. I do want to share that this grant program has seen significant growth over the past few years, both in the number of applications received as well as the amount being requested of the Winnipeg Foundation. As a result, we are fine-tuning the eligibility criteria a bit for this grant program. And again, we'll be hosting an information session focused on major capital grants closer to the spring intake for this program. So that's, at a high level, what's happening at the Winnipeg Foundation. As I mentioned, we'll break for 10 minutes so people can refresh their coffee and get some cookies. But before we do that, just wondering if anybody had any general questions about what you've heard about what's happening at the Winnipeg Foundation.
Hello everyone, my name is Neneth Banas and I will conduct the second portion of the presentation. It's been a while since I've done a presentation, I would say like January 2019, so I might be a little rusty with the technical aspect of things, so please be patient with me today. So for today, before I go through the community grants, I just want to walk everyone with our 2024 calendar of intakes. So Megan earlier on shared some information about our children and youth program. The application deadline is February 16th with decisions in March 2024. Our community grant intake is the deadline's March 1st with decisions May 2024, notification in June 2024. Our summer internship program, which you've seen Mercy around this morning. She's a great person to connect with if you're interested in this program. The mentor, the deadline for that is March 22, 2024. That's for our community partners like yourselves. And then for the intern, it's April 4th, 2024, with decisions May 2024. And then we have our major capital closer to the springtime with the two-stage applications with decisions in November. And then the last one is our multi-year grants. As Megan informed everyone earlier on, we're still working through the eligibility criteria with the Community Impact Committee right now, and so please stay tuned for more information. So for today, I'll be focusing our discussion about the community grants program. I'll be taking general questions at the end of the presentation, but for anyone who has specific questions, almost all of our program officers are in attendance today, so you can speak with them directly. So our community grants, it's our short-term grants, typically about a year, and those requests are up to $100,000. So the Winnipeg Foundation, we always say that we're a project funder, but we know that community organizations need stable, ongoing operating support, which is increasingly rare, and we hope to fill this gap with our multi-year funding intake later this year. The project funder model allows us to be flexible, support you, our community partners, with your innovative ideas or anything that's timely that you need support with to respond to the changing needs in our community. The process of applying is always competitive. Demand always exceeds funding that's available. And so I'm going to give you some tips this morning on how to strengthen your application. I want to reiterate that we are a 360-degree funder, and grants from the Winnipeg Foundation have specific purpose within a definitive time frame. In a few minutes, I'll be sharing what a successful proposal looks like. So in terms of what is eligible, Megan said our community grant is our Swiss Army knife of grants, or an Instapot grants, but things that are eligible are capital renovation. So that's basically any infrastructure projects from interior to exterior of your building, whether if it's replacing a floor or you're looking to support your building envelope. Other examples of construction are building new facility or even renovating your roof. In some cases, we've seen applications that looks at transforming your outdoor space to extend your programming. The next one is conferences or events, such as performances, festivals, anniversary celebrations, or special exhibitions. What we do not fund is fundraising events such as dinners. We also other eligible projects are equipment and infrastructure, so that could be computers, furnishings, or if you need a new website. We've seen a lot of requests coming in lately related to information and technology, so like servers, database, or special software related to your programming. I want to make a note that if you're requesting for a capital or equipment, to add quotes in your in your application. In terms of program operating, so we refer that to any cost specific to program, whether if it's a pilot or a demonstration project or a program that you've been doing for quite some time. So that can include staffing costs or program costs. We also accept a portion of your request to include administrative costs, which is between 10 to 15% of your total project budget. Other eligible projects are reports and planning. That could be strategic plans, fundraising strategy, evaluations, or business plans. Under special circumstances, we do consider short-term operating support or bridge funding. So until the organization is able to secure long-term funding. So there are also a couple of items that I want to add here. One is organizational capacity. So if there's a special capacity building workshop that you want to do as a board or with your staff that relates to your plan, that could also be eligible as an example. And finally, we recognize that many organizations, particularly our partners in the arts, are still feeling that impact of the pandemic. So if that's a circumstance in your organization, this is, like I said, the Swiss Army knife, this could be a potential program stream for your needs. And so what we don't support. So at this point, we do not make grants specifically for individuals. We also don't support project costs incurred before the grant decision. So I suggest to review online when decisions are made, I said earlier, end of May, to ensure that you're mindful of those timelines when you're doing your budget. We do not support at this time any fundraising campaigns, events, or staff positions. We also do not fund paying mortgages or reducing deficits. We do not fund political activities. We do not fund what we describe as exclusively religious activities. We acknowledge that we have many faith community partners who are doing good work in their neighborhoods. Those projects are eligible, but not direct religious activities. Last, we do not provide grant support for other grant-making programs. And I know that some of our community partners have great ideas, wanting to start their own granting program based on community needs. Unfortunately, that is not eligible. So what we look for in an application. So in terms of eligibility, at the moment for accepting applications from registered charities or qualified donees, organizations will need a registered charity number to access our application form. If your organization is a qualified donee, please contact our staff for more information how to access our application, and we can help you set up your profile in our grant system. Before we set up your account, we will need your CRA letter indicating your qualified donee status. Another one is projects must primarily benefit the people from Winnipeg. If your organization is located outside the city, you must make a strong case for how people in Winnipeg will benefit. So an example is a summer camp. We know that a large portion of their participants are coming from the city. We've also had a case of a family violence shelter where they made a case that women going into their shelters from Winnipeg are needed because of circumstances and for safety. So one of the things that I want to stress is that for this year and last year, we brought back the eligibility requirement of submitting all final reports on previous one-time community grants before submitting a new one. So we need to close that book in order to open a new grant program or new project at the foundation. So ideally, we would love for you to submit that final report 30 days prior to our application, but sometimes I know that's not the case. Like yesterday was 30 days to do that. And so as soon as you're able to, we will welcome you to submit that final report. Final report is part of our due diligence. It allows us to better report to our donors on the impact of our gifts. It also helps us understand the needs and gaps in the community and the impact of grant making or of our granting in community. So for example, reports from our COVID granting funds helped us understand the benefits of unrestricted funding. So we're asking the organization to make sure that your reporting is up to date. You've seen Roxanne around. Roxanne is here to support you with your final reports. So she's here, and she'll be able to assist you on what you need to do or how to complete them. Please note that the COVID stabilization or ADAPT grants are separate programs and does not impact your ability to apply for a community grant. Finally, grants are not made retroactively. Grants received in this intake will be decided in May, and the Community Impact Committee will not consider costs incurred before their decision meeting. So in terms of our assessment criteria, I always consider our assessment criteria kind of like peeling onions. We have a few because we are a 360-degree funder and we work with many different sectors. So there are different layers of criteria that we consider when we're reviewing your application. One is about your organization. We're asking organizations to affirm that their practices adhere to the Manitoba's Human Rights Code. This is always part of our granting criteria, but now it's directly in our application. Other items that we examine is your previous track record. So if your organization has received a grant from the foundation in the past, we will look at those projects. If your organization is new to the foundation, please provide some successes that you've had that you want to showcase your organization. Grant history. We always say that grant history is a factor in decision making. Organization's capacity to contribute to the project. So that would be whether if it's in kind or cash. Normally, grants officer will conduct site visits where they need more information. Site visits can be in person, virtual, or calls, and this is our chance to get to know the organization, collect information for our Community Impact Committee. I always say that every time I go to a site visit, it doesn't really mean that things are going to get approved. It's an opportunity for us to learn more about your organization. So in terms of projects, we consider different areas. One, we look for clarity. Has the project has been well thought out? Have you articulated the project goals and activities in your proposal? We're also looking at benefit to community. This includes the breadth or depth of the project. Will it impact individuals? Will it impact families? Will it impact neighborhoods? Next is community need or needs of the population being served. Here we will look for evidence of need for a project that could include stats, community surveys, even evaluation surveys that you've done for your organizations or needs assessment. We also assess the alignment of your organization's mission with your project. Is there congruency with your mission? Is this project represents a shift away from your organization's primary mandate? We will look for you to explain the change and why the board has decided to go in this direction, including how it fits with your organizational goals. Last is support from other funders. Are there other contributions to this project? The other project considerations are we always look at qualifications. Do staff and volunteers have the expertise or experience to take this on? And this will vary depending on the nature of the project. We're also looking at how you're working with others. Did you consult with other stakeholders prior to your application? Are you collaborating with organizations in this project, whether if it's a referral or you're partnering together, ensuring that there's no duplication in your neighborhood? We also review if the budget is realistic. Can the project go ahead if it doesn't receive the full amount requested? I also want to say that as part of our research, we may contact other funders or groups you work with to learn more about your organization. We also pay attention of what is being said about your organization in both traditional or social media. So there's a full range, as you can see, of how we examine when we're reviewing projects. The other layer. So other considerations. So if the requests are large requests, we'd be looking at the potential for other funders to come to the table as an indicator of viability for your request, particularly when granting budgets are tight and partial award is likely. So in your budget, please ensure that you include all your funders that you're requesting for support. In the budget too, you can check off if it's confirmed or unconfirmed. If it's unconfirmed, that's okay, as long as you have that in the budget. If you're working with diverse populations as part of your project, we expect that you will demonstrate cultural competency. Demonstration of cultural competency is a predictor of project success and shows organizations' authentic engagement with the community it serves and the desire to create a safe and supportive space for all. If you're requesting for construction or renovation projects, we also factor in accessibility features of the space. As we mentioned, we are a 360-degree funder, so we're not an expert in any one particular field, but we ensure that all organizations adhere to the effective or standard practices that are followed by their sector. So if you're doing counseling work, we'll look at the standard in counseling. If you're working with youth, we'll look at the practices working with youth. We looked at how also your project may impact environments. So if you are replacing your computers, we like to know how you're disposing those or how you're recycling those computers. The other ones are, I know that in some cases we have organizations who use a lot of disposable items and they want to move away from that, and so what they've done is acquired more permanent equipment, so like cutlery, plates, glasses, as example. So collaborations. So as an organization, you may submit for one community grant application per calendar year, and a second application is accepted in the case of collaboration. So we have a very definitive definition of collaboration. We defined it as 2 or more registered charities or registered charity and a nonprofit organization jointly planning and implementing a project. For-profit businesses are not considered collaborative partners. All collaborative partners must work towards a common goal to increase both organizations' program efficiency or effectiveness, or both organizations tackling a community issue. So examples of collaborations could be administrative alliances, organizational mergers, and projects that combines strengths and perspective of 2 organizations. For collaborative applications, we require special attachment, like a letter of memorandum of understanding between the collaborators, and outlining your roles. And then please be specific in your project summary that this is a collaboration project. I would like to also note that if your organization is submitting your own project, and a collaboration application in the same intake. Those two projects will be in competition with one another if we have a large intake for that round. So general information. Our application closes at 4:30 on the due date. I cannot stress enough, please do not wait at 4:30 to submit. Our system closes very promptly at 4:30. After that time, you will not be able to submit your application. In order for us to support you in the application, please, when you're doing your application, you can do that during your office hours if you can. So you could call someone at the foundation for assistance if needed. I just wanted to say that there are times that we do receive a heavy volume of calls and emails closer to the intake. Closer to the intake deadline, so please be patient with us and we will answer your question in rotation when it's received. The best advice that we can provide is to begin your application and complete your application well before the due date. If you have questions about the foundation or application process, or if you want to discuss the project but before you submit the application, we're always here to support you by phone, by email, or setting up a meeting. The other note that I want to share, I kind of just want to reiterate what Megan shared earlier on, that you may apply for a community grant and also a special grants program. So she talked about children and youth in the same calendar year, but for a different project. So for if you have specific questions about that, Aaliyah is here to help you. And then the last one, kind of just wanted to reiterate again, applying for a community grant is a competitive process. We have seen an increase in requests over the past year, and organizations are not guaranteed a grant each year. As you can see, I'm drilling in on final reports. So another slide on final reports. Like I said, it's an important eligibility requirement. You'll be able to see that in your grants portal. It will not stop you from applying, even if you have an outstanding final report. So please check on the status of your old reports before submitting a new application. New applications from organizations with outstanding community grant will not be reviewed. To check for outstanding final reports, you go to the action item, so you can see that on your left-hand side of your portal. And then please note that the due date listed beside on your report is only for organizations who do not intend to apply for this intake. So typically our agreements is about 2 years. We understand things happen, things change. If it's equipment or capital, that might take longer. So we always have that 2-year kind of leeway. But if you're applying for another grant at the foundation, you will need to complete whatever's outstanding in order to apply for a new grant. All community grants final report must be submitted by the March 1st deadline. So if you have another coworker who would like to support you finalizing the final report while you do the application, that's great. Or you can prioritize one over the other, but we need to receive both final report and applications by March 1st at 4:30 sharp. So I wanted to share some recent granting trends that we're seeing as an organization. Since the pandemic, we're seeing more and more larger requests and more requests too. When I first started out in 2017, our average grants in an intake is about 100. Now our average is about 250. The highest was 300. So you can just see the double in requests. Intakes, unfortunately, it's highly variable. We don't really know who's coming in during an intake, so it's difficult to predict what we will see in each intake. So, for example, last spring it was a lower number, but last fall it was a high number for us. We're also noticing that there are higher requests. About like last round, if I can share, half of the requests that we received were around $50,000 and more, and then 20% of the requests was at the maximum amount of $100,000. So when we're looking at those large requests, one of the things that the committee will look at is it viable to proceed if they receive partial requests. We understand that the reason for this high request is increased costs, increasing community need, and changing funding landscape. And so the grants committee tries to determine a meaningful amount for as many projects as possible we can do during an intake. We're also seeing more declines in an intake. So I'm going to give a rough estimate, about 15 to 25% of the applications being declined. All of the other considerations that I've shared with you earlier, sometimes with a large intake, there are other things that comes into play when assessing the application. Given the growing amount of competition, our committee has put additional lenses in decision making, and that they have opted to prioritize applications where there's a strong sense of urgency, either because of community or organizational need, that the project address safety or health concerns, that organizations led by our Black, Indigenous, people of color community are applying for that round. We know that from recent research that these organizations, our partners, are dramatically underfunded compared to their counterparts. Being given priority means that these proposals were more likely to receive grants or receive proportionally large grants than other requests. Requests that align with particular interests of a donor may also result in a larger grant. So the application process, we have this is our grants portal. This is how it will look like on your screen. There's a series of tutorials on our website that will walk you through every step of the application process. The link can be found on our community grants page under the Get Started button. For those of you who applied for a community grant in the past, there has been changes. I call it sparkly changes. They're quite nice in the application. I will highlight those changes and new features later on. The application will open by the end of this week on Friday, check-in Friday afternoon. We should be able to have that online for you. And at that time, you can go in and look at the questions. To access the application, you click on the Open Funding Opportunities on your screen. If you have begun an application in the system and returning to it, you can find it under My Application, so just right at the bottom, in Progress Application. So one feature that's added for this application is there's going to be an eligibility questionnaire. There's 3 questions confirming your organization's eligibility. One is you know, is the project benefiting people from Winnipeg? So the location of the project. Also, there's some questions about your organization, compliance with your bylaw as an example, or has your board, is your board aware that the application is being submitted and that they authorize and know that the information in the application. Last, you will need to confirm that the organization adheres to the Manitoba Human Rights Code. So in order to move forward in the application, you have to answer yes to all 3 questions. And then the other nice addition to the application is our co-applicant section. And so this means that if I'm the grant contact, I'm the main grant contact, I can invite a colleague to help me prepare the application. So my colleague, who's my co-applicant, they don't need to do a full profile, but they will need to register their email address in the system. Once they've gained their access, the co-applicant can edit and submit the application. So in the application, we have some areas for you to select, just for us to get to know a little bit better about the type of proposal that you're submitting to the foundation. So one is community. So some of the program areas are community services, literacy education and employment, health, wellness and recreation, environment, and climate change, arts, culture, and heritage. And I know for some for some of your proposal, it might not fit in best in one section. So just please try to do your best to select one that you think that fits with your proposal. The next one is, as you know, we have strategic priorities as an organization. So in the application, you will be asked to select one or multiple vital priorities that aligns with your proposal. So if your project does not align with the priorities, that's completely okay. There's a section below that says other benefits to community. There's also a narrative question in the application where we invite organizations to share whether their project aligns with one or more strategic priorities. So for example, if your project is located in the care area or related to the Manitoba child welfare system, also if it's related to one or more vital science priorities, we recognize that, like I said earlier, we recognize that not project will be aligned with any of that strategic priorities, and that's okay. One item that we want to point out that there's a consent to share in the application. So we ask whether if you're comfortable with us sharing the summary of your grant with donors and other stakeholders. If that's okay, please check that off. We never share confidential information or details, but simply the summary of your project. Another neat section that we added in the application is collaboration. There's a portion there in the application where you can indicate it's a collaboration. You can list your collaborative partners, and there's a question that will ask you to describe your collaboration, including the shared vision and roles of responsibilities of all collaborative partners in each phase of the project, so from planning, implementation, and evaluation. So we've shared previously that one of our foundational lenses is diversity, equity, and inclusion. To help frame diversity and equity inclusion, we can use the Nothing About Us Without Us principle that recognize people with lived experiences, provide valuable insights into a project. We ask organizations to describe the involvement of the community served and partners in the development, implementation, and evaluation of this project with this principle in mind. You can also describe the qualifications of the staff working on this project, so professional skills, lived experience, cultural competency as examples. As the Winnipeg Foundation's work, our strategic plan is grounded in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We recognize that this must be part of our collective culture to move forward, and we ask our community partners like yourself to share in the application how your project creates an environment of inclusion and belonging. So this is an example of the statement. Describe your organization's commitment to DEI. This may include information about governance, human resources, policies, activities, and overall strategies. To ensure that you capture all the things that you're doing as an organization, please connect with other staff or board member to help you complete this section. And then at the end, we have an attachments section. This is a new attachments tab. The following documents are required. These documents provide important context in our review, and failure to upload will affect your assessment. So we will need your current list of board of directors, most recent audited financial statement, approved operating budget, quotes for renovations and equipment if possible. And then optional are, your most recent annual report or letters of support. So some neat features of our grants portal is that you're able to view and print your application at any time using the button on top of your screen. So there'll be a little sign for you where to do that. When your application is complete, please click submit. If any required information is missing, you won't be able to move forward, but you will see like a pop-up of the list of the areas of list of the fields or things that you need to complete in your application. Once you've completed those, you can click submit again. After the submission, you will see on your grant portal on your homepage, the application will appear under the submitted portion, so it'll move to a different section in your portal, and you will automatically receive an email from Smart Simple confirming your application has been submitted. And then one thing that's new for the system this round is applications that are not submitted will be deleted in 2 weeks after the due date. So if you are working from a draft form that you would like to save for future reference, please save that into your files. So some general tips. Please be clear and concise. Use plain language. Many organizations have told us that they prepare their application in a Word document first, and they craft their answers or response that way, and they cut and paste to the application. This is a good idea so you don't get interrupted while you're doing your work, while you're completing your application, or just in case your computer is prone to glitches. If you're working in the system, please make sure that you save your application, if you need to step away for a bit. And last, consider asking someone to proofread your proposal. And as I mentioned earlier, we share your proposal with some donors if you feel comfortable with that. So particularly that area, because that's what the donors will see about your organization. So next. I feel like I've talked about deadlines so many times, probably like 100 times, so one more time. Okay, so the application portal closes at 4:30. Depending on the age of your computer, the speed of your connection, it can take a few minutes for your application to be fully transferred after you click submit. As I mentioned earlier, any in-progress application cannot be submitted after the portal closes. Again, a reminder, we only accept applications until 4:30 on March 1st, and also your final report has to be in by that time. In terms of the review process, the review process takes approximately 3 months. Our program officer will read your application to ensure that all the required information has been included and that you've answered all the questions. The officers will call you if they need to know more information about your projects or if there are points that needs to be clarified. And as I mentioned earlier, a call or a site visit does not mean your group will receive funding. It's just, we just need more information about the application. So after the grant decision, so for this round, we're hoping that you'll know early to mid-June to receive notification from our system about the application that you submitted this round. Grants decisions are made by our Community Impact Committee, made out of board members and also community volunteers. Their decisions are final, and their decision will be communicated, like I mentioned, through our portal, through our grant system. If successful, you will receive confirmation outlining the purpose and the amount of the grant payment and any conditions that have been placed in the grant will also be included in that information. So for example, an example of a condition will be if it's a capital project, I've seen our committee will add something along the lines of it'll be support for this capital project might be contingent upon other funders confirming support. So once you receive confirmation from other funders, then you can reach out to us and let us know that you met that condition, and we can get going and pay out the grant that you receive. So all correspondence, I just wanted to add, that will be sent to the person listed on the application as the highest ranking officer. Please make sure you check in with this person about the status of your application in June. Often we partner with our community generosity team who works with a lot of donors. And if a donor has contributed to your grant, you may be asked to provide a letter of thanks. And so typically my colleague Roxanne does that, so you will hear from Roxanne if that is the case for your project. So like I mentioned earlier, unless there's a condition placed on your grant, it will be paid out automatically at the outset. You may ask to provide a payment timeline showing how the grant will be expensed. So you will know that when you read the notification email that you receive from the system. One of the suggestion I might provide is please stay in touch with us to let us know how the project is going. Inform us if you're experiencing any challenges in the way that sometimes things happen. It's not quite as you have it outlined in the proposal. We're here to support you. We're here to problem solve that with you. And so please come and reach out to us and we'll work with you on that. We require a satisfactory report before you apply for another grant. So again, one final report push. If you don't receive a grant for this round, you will be notified by email. We're all here to support your organization if you receive a decline from this round. We're here to help you strengthen your application, unless that there's issue with eligibility. So please feel free to reach out and we're able to assist you on that one. One of the things I share with partners is that if you're feeling a little bit angry or a bit upset because your project has been declined, wait until you call. Until you're able, to accept some constructive feedback. And so one more time, I'm going to go through the intake deadlines, community grant. The application will be open on Friday, February 2nd in the afternoon. Deadline March 1st at 4:30. Application and any final reports. The meeting with the committee will be end of May, so notifications for decisions will be in June, so wait for that notifications in June. It takes a while for us to do that administrative work on the back end with 200 plus applications, so please be patient with those notifications in June. At the end of June, if you have not heard anything from the foundation, please feel free to reach out to us and we're able to assist you with what's happening with your application. And like what we mentioned earlier, multi-year grants will be due sometime in the fall. We are currently working out those eligibility and details with our Community Impact Committee, so please stay tuned for more information. So I'm going to take a bit of time I've shared a lot of things, so we're all, like I mentioned earlier, we're here to support you. Please reach out to our grants email, grants@wpgfdn.org. If there's something that comes up after and you needed more clarification. Anna Maria is our friendly person on that line, and so she'll be your first point of contact, and she'll help you figure out she'll triage that questions and work with other staff in the team who could provide you with answers. And then, I guess before we do the general question and answer, if you have specific questions, all my colleagues are here. I'm going to ask them to come to the front later after the general Q&A, so you have the opportunity to talk to them, and I'll introduce them as well. So I'm ready if you have any questions, general questions about the application. Yes. I think someone from the back I saw. Yes, how can I help you?
One of the things you mentioned is you assess grants based on viability of the project if the full amount requested is not granted. But there's no information requested about
what we could do or how we could do things if there's less than the full amount requested. So is there any way to like provide additional information, or do you just like, should the attached budget, but I guess there's a budget form, but do we attach a separate form with multiple budgets, or how do you even, because like we could provide that information if there's a way of providing it.
Yeah, I understand. In terms of, that viability piece and the budget piece that you're discussing, there's a section in the budget that you could actually say, what you're able to do in partial support. I've seen applications that has included some information that if they don't receive the full funding, that they're able to do X, Y, Z in the application.
Okay, and another quick question, audited financials, are reviews or compilations also acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you did mention specific to, I guess, organizations that are religiously exclusive, I guess, not funding those. How do you treat, for example, schools that are faith-based, linked, I suppose? Are they looked at differently in that scope?
Mm-hmm. So I think, in line with that will be if the activities are directly religious, we are unable to support that. But if it's more recreation oriented, that we can. We also have Carrie, who's here, and she'll be able to specifically answer your question because she handles all our education programs or education requests. Hi, Anne.
With regard to the quotes, when one's looking for capital objects, is it one quote, say, or if you're having something built, do you have one quote, or do you have to supply multiple quotes? Because it could be that you have searched multiple and received multiple quotes, but for the product that you wish to be able to deliver, you may be wanting to specify one certain. So I'm wondering, what is the foundation's view with regard to the types or numbers of quotes that are to be submitted? Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. So definitely use the quote that the product that you want to use. So at minimum, like one quote is okay. If you could see two businesses who could provide the same item, you can provide two quotes, but at minimum one. But use the quote for the project or the item or the equipment that you want.
Two questions here. Considering the decline rate that you just presented, and I appreciate that the grant applications are very competitive. So I'm just sitting here and wondering what the chances are for a small and fairly new organization competing against big organizations like schools or municipalities that have got funding relationship and history with you. That's number one. Number two is there any limit to an organization with charity status collaborating with non-profit organizations without charity status? Is there a limit to the number of projects they can collaborate with?
So the first question is in terms of how can a small grassroots organization compete with larger organization with deep granting relationship at the foundation. You've seen us talked about our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the support for Black, Indigenous, people of color organizations who are working in their community. We're also here to support those smaller grassroots organizations. I know that everyone's are volunteering, and sometimes you need a bit more guidance or more assistance in terms of your application. Roxanne is here to support those grassroots organizations. So we're here to support. Just please reach out so we can help you. And then in terms of your second question, in terms of the number of collaboration registered charity can apply for, you will need to, my suggestion is to talk to that registered charity partner and see if they have other outstanding collaboration projects at the foundation, because as you know, they need to close that grant in order to apply for a new one. And it'll be a bit of a conversation between you and that registered charity in terms of the timing and fit of when to apply for the application.
Thanks so much. Thanks for this presentation. A couple quick questions. In terms of the timing of eligible expenses, you said that that would start at the time that the grant decision makes a committee, and then running until when or for how long? You said contracts are usually made for 2 years, or the time of, I guess, finishing up the report so that you can apply again. Is that right, or are there other criteria in terms of length of project?
No. So definitely we don't do any retroactive pay, so it has to be right on the day when the committee makes that decision. All of our grant agreements have a 2-year kind of grace period, because things change within our organization. But as I mentioned, if you're looking at applying again for another application for another round, you will need to close that in order to apply for a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you say one application per program per year, that's calendar year?
At this point, yes, one calendar year, but as Megan mentioned earlier on, we have the community grant intake, so everyone can apply for a community grant intake, and if you're interested in multi-year, depending on the parameters and the eligibility of multi-year, if your organization or idea fits that, you're able to apply for that one too.
Okay, so that would be a new stream of funding, sort of separate from community grants?
Yes, separate from community grant in the fall.
Great. And do you anticipate a fall deadline for community grants this year?
No, we do not.
Okay. And because there has been, I think, 2 per calendar year in the past.
Yes.
Is it that there'll be 1 probably going forward?
Yeah, so
okay.
at this point, for this year, we're looking at one for the March intake, and then we do have the multi-year for the fall.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello there. When were those reports due? I'm just kidding.
March 1st.
I'm just curious, and I'm sorry because we keep going back to the multi-year. We're just curious if there could be more value in a certain project we're trying to run with the multi-year piece, and we're worried, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by trying to apply for the community grant now, or should we change, what that project looks like? Is there just any feedback you might be able to provide in that regard? And sorry, because I'm sure you guys are like in a bit of a dark space around this too, but I'm just curious, can it be the same project that we apply for and say it's a future, multi-year?
Yeah, unfortunately, at this point, I'm unable to provide further guidance because we need to connect with our community impact committee to work on those criteria. I'm sorry.
Can I add just one quick question?
Sure.
Does that mean that, or historically in the past, have agencies, organizations been able to apply for the community grant and use that project in the multi-year grant as well? I don't know, that's slightly different, perhaps still kind of the same question, but.
So in the first reiteration of multi-year, this is back in the day 2017, we did do a program grant, but I don't want to get into that kind of route because I really don't know what our community impact committee will want for this upcoming multi-year. Sorry, I'm feeling like I'm unable to help. But as soon as we have information, we'll definitely provide that to all of our community partners. Please sign up for our e-newsletter if you haven't yet, because you'll receive those updates about our program. If you don't know where to sign up for that, please connect with us and we'll direct you as to how to sign up for this, for the e-newsletter.
You said that there might be a larger grant or a larger amount of funding if there's alignment with the wishes of donors. Do you have like a list of donor wishes or something like that? You know, because some programs and projects have some flexibility to them. So sometimes it's really easy to like be flexible.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have a list of, donors that we could know that, if this donor is super interested in this or this donor is super interested in that. We share those applications to donors, and if there's something that aligns with their wishes or activities in the city that they would like to do, then that's how we're able to engage them. So I'm sorry we're unable to share more about that.
Oh, so you send all applications to all donors?
We don't share all applications to donors unless everyone says yes to that. So depending on confirmation, and there's only a subset of donors that we work with who are interested in working with us through the community grant process.
Is there any more details on how those donors work in the?
So how we engage with those donors?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we work with those donors through our community generosity team, and so they will identify donors who are interested in participating in the community grants process, and so that's how we identify interest in participating in the program. No, unfortunately not. So my suggestion really in terms of how to strengthen kind of like how to kind of get a donor be interested in your application is to really focus on your project summary, because those are the information that we share with our donors. Yes.
Hi, my name is Kirby, and I don't actually have a question, but thank you very much for answering everyone's questions and the awesome information that you provided. I just wanted to make a comment since I represent the disability community and what I do in my future grant writing, and your presentation had a nothing about us without us point, and which is an awesome thing, and I just think it's really important to point out that that's a slogan from disability activism, and I'm quite sure it's also a slogan from Black disability activism. So I think if we're going to add that as a point and say it out loud and talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion and use something from these communities, we should be saying it out loud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Thank you for the information session today. I have a question. If organization applied for a children and youth grant, you think they are still eligible to apply for community grant?
Yeah, I think it will depend on the nature of your request. So I feel like maybe that's a one-on-one conversation that either you and I could have, or Aaliyah is around to assist you with that one.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I just have a quick question. I love the way that you are all describing the Swiss Army knife scenario with the community grants program. And outside of the operating or the multi-year program that you'll have running again, is there any allowance or success with hybridity in terms of the kinds of applications in the community grant? So, for example, when I was watching you go through them all, I just said, oh my gosh, like, you know, we always have a project in every one of those areas, as I'm sure most people here do. So sometimes it's a challenge to drill down and focus on the priority for the organization at any given time. But and I know that a grant project has to be project specific, but you know, a project for the public that also includes training for the staff and the board, and also for community outreach. Do you know what I mean? So is there allowance for hybridity or you know, part A, B, and C of this? Like that underneath a project falls some very particular points. So it looks like you're checking off 3 things instead of 1.
Yeah, like a wish list.
Well, sort of, but they do really all dovetail into.
Yeah. And so I think my advice is, you know, focus on the need of your organization. I think you will hear that from all of our officers in terms of if you're debating about which program or which type of proposal that it's needed, that you want to apply to the foundation. We're here to be a sounding board, but we will always go back to you as our community partner. What is important to you? And if that's important to you, then you need to make a case that that's what you need to apply for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any hands. And feel free to chat with us in person if you don't feel like asking publicly.
Okay, so I'm there's another question at the back.
Yeah, one last question. So if you get, let's say you get 2 or 3 applications that are for very similar things, and it would be more viable if those 3 organizations worked together or the applications were combined somehow. Do you actually, like, will you actually evaluate an application saying, actually, can you resubmit because this makes more sense or something? Or is it just like, here's an application, it's on its own individual merits, and there's kind of no screening of how maybe certain projects or programs can fit together to be like far more effective?
Mm-hmm. Good question. So, you know, it'll be under the guidance of our community impact committee. If they see fit that those 3 organizations doing the same thing will be better off partnering together, they will provide us guidance around that, and we will share that with the organization.
And they can resubmit then?
They will have to resubmit. We have to go through the process, and they have to, depending on the guidance of the Community Impact Committee, they might have to resubmit the application for another intake.
For another intake?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no like for a certain intake, like for a single intake, you can't like look at the applications and see like this makes more sense for the community, and there's just, you know, because there's sometimes like there's 24-ish active transportation nonprofits in Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes there's overlap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, no. We cannot, if you submit an application, we cannot ask you to revise your application after submitting. your application. We could ask for clarification questions based on the request for our committee, but in order to, unfortunately, no, not at this point.
Maybe that's some feedback for future intakes if there's a possible combination step that can be added.
Yeah, I encourage people. So one of the items in the questions are community involvement, right? And so how is community involved in the structure or the design of the application or the program or how you're implementing the project? But we'll take your feedback in mind. Okay, so I'm just going to invite my colleagues up. So we have Carrie Ryan over here. If you have questions about education, literacy, employment, and climate. We have my colleague Aaliyah. If you have any questions about children, youth, and also the special granting program, Children and Youth. We have Roxanne here. If you have questions about final reports, my colleague Noah is here coming down from the stage. If you have projects under health, wellness, and recreation. My colleague Anna Maria, who's over here, if you have general specific kind of eligibility questions. Roxanne and Anna Maria might not be able to answer your questions right off the bat today because they might need to confirm information in the database, but they're here to assist you. And I'm here also to answer any questions related to your application and organization.